World building might be the single most valuable thing you can do to become a better dungeon master. Even if you never use the world you're building to run a game and you never show it to anyone. Now, I know this might sound weird. If you're not gonna use it, why bother? Don't the players just want to roll dice? I don't think so. So today I'm gonna explain to you why. And it has to do with how expertise actually works. Now, if you're like most DMs, you probably played in a published setting before, like the Forgotten Realms or Eberron. And it's cool. These are detailed worlds. They're part of the game's history, and your players might already know them. In comparison, creating a world from scratch can feel like a lot. So maybe you think, like I used to, that world building is all about the output. You do it for a while, and you end up with a world you built, so you have somewhere to run your game. Kind of like if the world was the product, in a sense. And yeah, when you think like that, if you're not going to use the product, why bother? But what if world building wasn't really about the end result? But what about building it does to you? I started thinking about this when I noticed my DM skills were hitting a ceiling. I could run modules just fine, but when players would try something weird, it was really hard to not freeze or railroad. I don't think I'm the only one here. I think what was happening is at the time, I didn't have the mental muscles that let me adapt to unexpected situations. And also, I felt something that's harder to put into words. It sort of felt like playing D&D was like looking through a window. So I started wondering, what's actually going on when a DM is really good at improvising? Researchers have studied how improvisation works by mostly looking at jazz and chess. And I think what they found explains a lot about DMing and why world building is so useful too. When you watch a great jazz musician do their thing, it looks completely spontaneous, like music just pouring out. But that's not really what's happening. An improvising musician has spent years and years working and internalizing patterns. Scales, licks, chord voicings, they call it vocabulary. It never ends. You eat and consume music to make it your own and become able to create on the spot. The specific combination they play feels new, but the components are never truly original. And I think this actually applies to DMing. When a DM just freezes up, the problem isn't creativity. They simply don't have enough raw material as part of their passive mental toolbox. They need more patterns. To come up with patterns, the musicians practice scales and transpose. And I believe the DM's best way to do something similar is to world build. You might think this is just a convenient parallel, but this might change your mind. I found this study on chess players from 1973 from Chase and Simon. They showed actual chess positions from previous games to both masters and beginners for just 5 seconds, and then asked them to recreate them from memory. Surprise, surprise, the masters did a lot better than the beginners and could rebuild the boards almost perfectly. Until the researchers tried something different. They took some other positions and replaced the pieces at random to create weird positions that would not happen in a real game. This killed the masters' advantage, and their performance dropped to the beginner's level. That is because the masters don't have better memory hard drives, so to speak, but they do have better indexing. This is a theory called chunking. Researchers estimate grandmasters have stored about 50,000 unique chunks in their long-term memory. Those are meaningful patterns that keep coming up in games. So when a beginner looks at the board, they see the individual pieces, but when a master does, they see something that's closer to a sentence made of 5 or 6 familiar words, and the random positions don't trigger any patterns. So even the masters go back to watching individual pieces. Now, think about what happens when a DM never really builds anything themselves. I think we can use the chess story as a metaphor. Every unexpected situation is like one of these random chess positions. They have to solve everything from scratch in real time, and it creates pressure. But if you build stuff, you have stuff to use. It can be faction dynamics, NPC motivations, geography, Like, there's a wide variety of things you can draw from and mix and match. And this is why I think it's really about world building and not just prep too, by the way. You can prep a written module, but world building introduces scale in the equation. And with that scale, you create a lot more variety, meaning a larger potential number of combinations that all have the potential to feel more unique. By the way, before I go on, I just want to share something with you. When I check my analytics, I noticed that most of you guys watching this channel aren't subscribed to it yet. So I would like to make an offer to you. You click subscribe, and in exchange, I do everything I can to keep making better and better videos that take this stuff seriously. I promise, everything helps. Alright, so world building helps you improvise better. You build patterns and have more material to draw from. Cool. But that's just kind of the obvious benefit. It's the one I expected to find when I started to do the research for this video. But it turns out there's also something else that happens when you world build, which is harder to see. And I actually think it might be even more important than the improv stuff. There is this weird phenomenon that many people writing fiction talk about. In fact, they talked about it so often that researchers had to give it a name: the illusion of independent agency. A psychologist named Marjorie Taylor studied fiction writers and found that over 92% of them experienced this. They mentioned that at some point, their characters started feeling like independent agents. They felt like they stopped being fully under their control. It's weird, but many writers describe, for example, characters having opinions about the plot or refusing to do certain things. But I think the one element that really interests us here is there was a strong correlation between this feeling and the author's level of expertise. The more experienced they were, the more often they said this was happening. This is the result of some kind of deep mental modeling. You think about a character so much that your brain starts running them automatically. Your brain's tendency to do pattern completion just fills in the gaps before you consciously make decisions. And I think the same thing can happen with world building. NPCs you've spent a long time developing can start generating responses on their own. It allows you to stop treating the world as a collection of facts you have to remember, and to start treating more like a simulation you can just draw from. And this is already quite cool if you ask me. But there's another even deeper layer to this that I don't hear many people talk about. And it's the one thing that explains the "even if you never show it to anyone" part. World building reveals you. When you build a world, you're essentially just making choices. Lots and lots of choices. What cultures exist and what do they value? What are the conflicts happening in there? What do good and evil look and feel like in your world? Etc. And these choices aren't random. They mean something about you, your values and fears. It can be because you agree with what you're putting in there, or because they repulse you. They're a compilation of the questions you're drawn to and find worthy of being explored. So in a sense, building a world is almost like holding up a mirror. You'll learn what you actually care about by seeing what you choose to create. I think that's part of what I was missing when I talked about experiencing D&D through a window. I still love the Forgotten Realms, but maybe I wasn't putting enough of myself into the world I was playing in. And maybe that created some kind of distance and made it harder to imagine stories I was really excited about, making them harder to run and less fun for the players. Because when you've done this kind of work on yourself, you start reading your players differently. It gets easier to notice what stuff excites them. You understand why some moments work and others don't. So I believe world building trains you to get good at the collaborative aspect. You spend a lot of time imagining how different people with different values would see the same situation. It's kind of like empathy practice, which you can use with the actual humans at your table. So at this point, maybe you're thinking, okay, I'm in, but where do I even start? And I think the most important thing you need to hear is don't go in thinking you need to build Middle-earth. Like, truly. You don't need years of history and a deep cosmology and a beautiful giant map to start playing in your world. You're never done building your world. It's literally impossible because the entire point of it is to enjoy the process. So you might as well start very small. It can be a single city or faction Or maybe you want to write a short story on some NPC and see where it takes you. It can take many forms. The idea is to get going, start building patterns, and take the first step on this journey. It will be enough to start getting some of those benefits we mentioned and to learn a few things about yourself. Just follow what you're curious about. If you're here, you're quite deep in what is, let's face it, a very nerdy video. Though you probably are a curious person, and you should use that. Is there a question you've always wanted to explore? Any kind of culture or conflict that you can't look away from? Is there something you would build if nobody was ever going to see it? Start with this. It's what's yours. And if you just want to kickstart, I made something called After the Fall. A collection of 15 NPCs that all feel unique and can be a starting point to then build on. You can either get it by itself or as part of my Patreon membership. So just check out the link in the description. The point is, this is not prep or homework you have to do before you're allowed to run a game. It's fun practice that allows you to become a better DM by creating connections between the things that teach you what you care about. The world isn't even really the point. It's just that building it transforms you because you internalize patterns, get better at improv, and meet characters that start feeling weirdly alive. I think it might be one of the most rewarding parts of the whole hobby that you can conveniently start today. And if you want to learn about how to then take your world and bring it to your table in a way that will be fun for everyone there, click on this video next to learn about the most common mistakes to avoid when playing in a homebrew world.